Hi everyone. I'm going to make a different type of video today because I think it's important to connect to other people that need human connection going through being addicted to opiates or in opiate recovery. I'm going to make this video again anonymous because my face isn't important. There's so many faces of addiction that mine doesn't matter. I mean, we all matter, but there's so many of us. I was the only person in my outpatient rehab that wasn't in the medical field. So addicts are your neighbor, your family member, your doctor, your anesthesiologist, your nurse, your teacher. You have no idea how many people are affected by this. I'm just one of those voices, and I'm going to tell you what I know to be true and what happened to me. My title isn't meant to be offensive, the accidental addict. I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be an opiate addict. Nobody does. That's never anybody's goal in life. We all have a lot bigger dreams than that. And this isn't ever what any of us expect it to be. But we are. And I think that it's important to do this video in an easy listening format where if you have YouTube Premium, you can just shut your screen off, put your headphones on and listen and connect to another person. I'm never going to show images where you have to turn your screen on so you can listen to it at work in your headphones or in the car, and just hear my story. Mine is one of so many. My story isn't meant to say that I'm better than anybody else because of the way that it happened and what happened to me. It's just one story. And I think that if you're going through this, or your child is going through it, or your spouse, or your sibling, or somebody that you love very much, or you're going through it, it can be one of the loneliest places in the world because nobody understands around you most of the time. They don't know what it feels like to say goodbye to your child when they leave and wonder if they're going to come back alive, and almost for you to be relieved if they didn't, because their pain would end, their suffering would end, your worry would end. Nobody knows what that feels like except you. But it's important to know that there's many of us, and mine is just one voice that I want you to hear today. So I think it's important to change gears from me talking about Sublocade and my misadventures on it to something real and raw. Because if you have a voice and you have an audience and you have people listening that are looking for help, then it's your responsibility to witness to them and be there for them. So, first of all, I truly believe, working with addicted people and being a person in recovery like myself, that every addict is dual diagnosis. And by that I mean almost every one of us has issues with depression, anxiety, bipolar, OCD, PTSD, CPTSD. I mean, there's so many things. And once you peel back the layer of addiction, you're going to find something deeper. And I don't know if it's possible for you to get better and fully get to a place of recovery without working on that first. That's what I've found. For me, I think the root of it was that my parents were never there. There was 4 of us kids. My dad was usually drinking or not home, and my mom was abusive. They always said that she had a chemical imbalance, but I lived in fear, and my dad never protected us. I don't even think he was able to. So I protected my siblings. And the things that happen to a human being when they're abused as an innocent child are horrible, and they stay with you for a lifetime. I'm married to somebody that I love very much, and he had the same thing happen to him. And I can tell you that it changes somebody in a way that it's really difficult to come back from and change the habits that result from the abuse. I was abused most of my life between my parents, who I've recently went no contact with because I got strong enough to stand up for myself, and from some other things that happened to me. The first of which is that I was brutally raped when I was 19. I was working as a cocktail waitress at a bar. I was very, very naive. I was trying to take care of myself and put myself through school. So I took a job at a local bar, just serving at night to make extra money. I didn't know people very well there, and the manager of the bar asked me to come to a party at his house afterward. I would always say no, but one time I finally broke down and said yeah, and he said a lot of the girls would be there. But when I showed up, I was the only one there. I looked around and I was scared. I wanted to leave. I didn't have my car. I was dropped off that night because there was an issue with my car. So I tried calling to get a ride, and in the meantime, they asked me if I wanted a drink, and I said water. Little did I know that water was actually spiked with the date rape drug. So I remember bits and pieces, things that haunt me, and I'll never ever forget. But having that happen to me really, really meant, it changed the way that I thought, changed the way I felt about myself. It changed the way I felt about men. And that was another thing that led to my demise. I was always a very shy person. I was always very introverted into myself. And I think a lot of that was trauma. So after that, I worked in a bank when I was, after that time, because I wanted to get out of that scene. I didn't have parents telling me right from wrong or anything beyond don't do drugs, don't get pregnant. They never talked to me beyond that, so I had to figure everything out myself. So when I was finally in a place where I could, I ended up working as a banker. And when I was a banker, I met a man. He would come in, all the time. I could tell that he liked me. He always looked at me, and other tellers that knew him, that had worked there a long time, knew that he came in a lot as a regular customer, and they heard that he wanted to date me. And one day he finally got the courage to talk to me. When I was opening someone's bank account, he waited in line, and he asked me to go to Chicago to a Dave Matthews Band concert with him. I told him, that's 5 hours away from here. I'd have to get to know you first. I'm not going to get on an airplane with you and stay in a hotel with you when I don't even know you. So we started dating. I thought everything was fine. We had a lot of fun. He went out every night, living the bachelor life and having fun. And then we went to Chicago to the concert. While we were there, and I hadn't been to too many concerts before, I got a really, really bad headache. It was so loud at Soldier Field that night. My head was pounding, and I told him, I said, him and his brother that were there, and his brother's wife, I said, my head is pounding. I think I need to go back to the hotel. And is that okay? And he said, yeah, but I have some pills with me, for pain. And, I have back problems. And it's kind of like aspirin. If you take it, you'll feel better. I thought about it. You would think after the experience that I had at the bar that I would feel differently, but I trusted him. I was a generally trusting and pretty naive person. So I took the pill, not knowing that it was Vicodin. I didn't even know what Vicodin was. So I kept getting rebound headaches every night, which was a side effect of taking that type of medication. And every night we'd go out to dinner and he'd give me the yellow pill too if it was worse, for weeks, until one day he decided to hang out with his friends instead of with me, which was fine. I was happy to have a night off to myself. But I got really, really sick. And I went to the ER because the doctor was closed, and they told me after a drug test that I was in opiate withdrawal after I explained what had been happening. That was a shock because I had no idea what opiates were or what opiate withdrawal was. I was horrified. I'd only been drunk a handful of times in my life. I never did drugs. I never did anything. I was a good kid. How could this happen to me? Well, it did, so I had to deal with it. And I guess I could have gotten help, but I didn't have any help, and I was embarrassed. So I kept taking the pills. I soon found out that now that I knew what they were and I was aware, that I felt better. I didn't feel the pain anymore. I didn't feel self-conscious. Wasn't shy to talk to people. I felt free, almost. I felt this warm sensation that would come over my body. And I felt like I could do everything I needed to do, even when I was tired. And that was something I didn't want to give up. I didn't feel the pain of what my parents did to me or what happened that day after work. I didn't feel any of it. I didn't feel anything anymore but calm and happy. But my addiction got worse and worse and worse. I took more and more pills. Him and I got married, and I ended up finding out that I was miscarrying one day at work. I was sitting in a meeting at Coney Island, which is funny enough right across the street from where my husband works now. And I started bleeding profusely. I was in more pain than I had ever felt in my life. The cramping and the pain. I was laying on the floor, writhing in a pool of blood, and I couldn't get a hold of my husband, so they did get a hold of my mom, who seemed annoyed and angry. She drove me to an urgent care, and they whispered something to her, and she said, "We have to go to the hospital." There, they told me, "You're fine, you just had a miscarriage, you're pregnant, but we're not anymore." And I was devastated. They had guessed by my HCG count and some other things that I was almost halfway through my pregnancy. I knew that I had been sick, but I wasn't taking care of myself. I blamed myself. I felt like it was my fault. I didn't know. I had no idea. I knew I was sick, and I was gaining a little bit of weight, but it just felt like water. So it was pretty horrible, and it was one of the things that I just didn't want to feel anymore. That wasn't the last time that I would lose a baby. So then, the years passed. I found out that I was pregnant again. But this time I had this feeling. It was 4th of July, 2006. I had this feeling it was going to be okay, that I was going to be a mom. I looked at this stick that I had just peed on and thought to myself, that pink line, he's going to make it. I'm going to be a mom. And I was right. I quit taking pills. I suffered through a quick taper. I quit smoking. I stopped everything. I didn't care what happened to me because all I cared about was bringing the baby into the world, safe and sound. I was totally dedicated, and I got my life together, and I was the healthiest I had ever been. But when he turned 2 years old, I was just standing there thinking, man, I have so many things to do. I don't feel good today. If I just had a pill. And I ended up right back where I started. Smoking, taking pills. My son was 2. I just did it when I was at work. Then it would wear off by the time I got him from daycare. That's what I told myself. I realized that if I didn't get away from this man, who always seemed to have pills, because he'd order them from online pharmacies and get them from people he worked with, that I was going to end up dead, and my child wasn't going to have a mom. My beautiful, healthy baby wasn't going to have a mom if I didn't do something different. And there were other problems. You know, my husband at the time, he never came home from work. We hardly ever talked. We had issues, you know, things that I won't get into. And I divorced him. I met someone new and I got remarried. And for the first time, I was with somebody who loved me, who cared if I was sick or hurt, who wouldn't dream of wanting me to be addicted to something. He was different. He was a child of abuse too. His first wife was abusive too. So he knew what that felt like. Finally found somebody that understood. I wanted to get better. I was sick of feeling sick because I would quit taking the pills and then something would happen and I would take pills again. I was getting, I'd have issues like ovarian cysts or a dental problem or an injury or ruptured eardrum, something would happen. And I'd just be back where I started and I wanted help. So I got into treatment at an outpatient facility. I completed it. They started me on a medication called suboxone. And everything seemed fine at first. But it wasn't fine. Because suboxone numbed everything about me. The side effects were mood swings, being irrational, being exhausted but not being able to sleep. Weight loss. There's just so many things. Dental problems from the dry mouth. You name it. Suboxone made me feel horrible and numb. I didn't enjoy things anymore. So, along the way, I started looking at other options. I tried Univale, but it would get all slimy on my cheek. It was a buccal film. I tried some generic tablets, and I'd always end up at Suboxone because it was more readily available at the pharmacy. And if you know what it's like to be on Suboxone or MAT drugs that you fill at the pharmacy, it's not a picnic because you're judged very, very, very heavily. A lot of times they don't even want to give you your medication. So I had my fair share of experiences at pharmacies that, I guess you should call them treatment barriers because they were terrible. I can't believe that they treat people the way that they do. Who cares how much Suboxone somebody takes, as long as they're not out stealing and thieving and nearly dying and doctor shopping and all of the things that they're doing. And they're taking a drug that doesn't give any euphoria if you take it regularly. So I don't understand. But I just got sick of the rat race, and I eventually tried something called Zubsolv, but it was harder to get in, and I felt 100 million times better. But then they came out with Sublocade, and if you want to hear about my experience, that's on other videos. So anyway, I guess what the point of this video is that nobody wakes up in the morning and decides that they want to be an addict. Nobody does. Nobody wants that. But when you're in the throes of addiction, you can't imagine your life without that feeling that makes you excited to get out of bed, even when your life is terrible. The feeling that you can talk to people, the feeling that you're not going to dwell on all these things that bother you every day and that are so traumatic that it's hard to deal with. It's hard to think about a life where your body doesn't feel warm and calm and at peace. It's hard to think of how you'll do anything. But there's hope. There is a way. You can do it. You can get treatment. You can get better. You have to want to. And you have to figure out what it is that led you there in the first place. For me, it was a combination of things. Being naive and stupid and not educated on the things that people do to other people. Not being educated on the fact that I come from a line of drunks. I'm predisposed to being an addict or an alcoholic. Not being educated on what your disease state is, your mental health issues. I didn't truly get better until I said goodbye to my parents. They weren't changing. They didn't see any problem with what they did to my siblings and I. And they didn't want to go to counseling. So I had to make the very, very difficult choice to cut them out of myself and my family's lives, my kids' lives. And it hurt like hell. And it still hurts every day. But when you're being abused mentally, physically, financially, in any way that there is, you can't focus on you. You can't take any more than what you're already taking. And removing something like an opiate, a full agonist, or getting down real low on your dose of buprenorphine or getting off of it isn't possible. You're going to relapse because you're going to have a bad day. Somebody's going to say something terrible to you if you're in an abusive situation. Somebody's going to hurt you. Something's going to remind you of the baby that you lost. Someone's going to remind you that you're missing your children that your ex-wife alienates you from. Something's going to remind you of how much pain you're in, and you're not going to want to feel it anymore, and you know that not feeling it is one pill away. Thank God I never had to deal with being addicted to a needle, because that's an addiction all by itself, or snorting. I mean, I've never done anything like that, but I hear that, and I've seen that that's something that you have to overcome too. So I'm grateful that that never happened to me. But, so, if you're an addict right now, you have to know that suboxone isn't going to fix everything for you. Zubsolv isn't going to fix everything. Sublocade's not going to fix everything. You have to get help for what it is that led you there in the first place. And you have to stand up, and you have to be strong, and you have to work on yourself, and you have to get to the bottom of it. You need to tell the people around you that are taking advantage of you or abusing you, enough. You either straighten out, or you're not a part of my life anymore. It's part of the people, places, and things that you have to let go of. That's like the fourth thing, that you have to let go of that they don't talk about when you're an addict. You let go of the people, places, and things that remind you of using, but you let go of the things that are bringing you down to a place where you feel that you need to be numb. You have to get to the bottom of that. And if you're the mom, or the dad, or the loved one, or the spouse of the person that's addicted right now and needs treatment, or is struggling in treatment and keeps relapsing, I want you to know that there's hope, because I have been on and off of buprenorphine in different forms for over 8 years. It was 8 years on July 11th, 2019. And I've never once relapsed. But I can tell you that part of the reason is because I got to the bottom of why. My doctor told me that, mostly for me it was more of a physical dependence than an addiction because of the way that it happened, kind of accidentally, but who's to say it wouldn't have happened some other way? So you have to get to the bottom of it and why it started and what kept you there and what is holding you down, and fix that first. And once you can fix that, then it can get better. Then when you're strong from that, you can take steps to get off of buprenorphine or to get on buprenorphine to get back off of it again. I mean, whatever your journey is, but you have to want it. You have to want to be better. You have to look at the people, like I said in another video, walking down the street, happy, smiling, laughing with their family. They didn't have to take a pill or dissolve a film to be able to walk down the street like you did. You have to want that bad enough. You have to find something that's so important to you that it's worth it if you're not worth it yet, because that'll come down the road. If it's not worth it, you're not worth it to yourself yet, look at your children. Look at those babies. Think about how sad they would be without their mommy or their daddy. Look at the family members, because I can tell you that killing yourself with opiates is suicide just the same, and nobody deserves that pain. So if you don't care enough about yourself yet, care about the people that love you. Lean on them. Look at them as much as you can and hold them. And realize that they're important enough, and do it for them, and the rest will come with time. Because now I know that I'm important enough. I matter. And I know that I matter because I make a difference. I started a group for women who are addicted to get them into treatment, or women that are already in treatment that feel very alone after I had my son in 2013 and had to get off of the medication by myself, which was a journey. But I felt like I was doing it alone because I was so ashamed, and I didn't want anyone to have to feel like that. So I know that those women, you know, they were enough, and they were why I had to do this, why I had to keep going. I look at my kids and my family and my husband. They're worth it to have me, you know, and then I became worth it too, because the love that they give back to me shows me that I'm worth it, and now I really believe it. It's very hard when somebody abuses you to feel like you can stand up. I had the hardest time thinking about, you know, how could my mom pick a 4-year-old child up by the hair and throw me at a wall for not making her bed? How could she do that? I look at my kids and I could never do that. I could never cause them physical pain or fear. What about me was so lesser than, was so not worth anything, that my own mother could physically beat me with a barbecue brush or a hairbrush, or choke me with a bar of soap when I was just a baby? What about me was so not worth it? And that's how I felt. But when I got stronger and I stood up, I realized that it wasn't me, it was her. What about her was so low that she could hurt me like that and not get help? And that's what you're doing to the people around you. When you're not getting help, you're hurting them. So you have to realize that they're worth it. All of these things tie together. So maybe I'm rambling, but I just want you to know, whoever you are, that you're not alone. Somebody loves you. Somebody cares. I care. And our government's solution to the problem of opiate addiction is buprenorphine or methadone. That's what we got, guys. So, I mean, if that's what you have to do, and you have to be on it for the rest of your life and kind of be like a zombie, but you're still there for your kids, then you do that. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't, because it's better to be on buprenorphine than it is to be dead, or methadone, right? But if you can get off of it, that's great, but you have to have a big toolbox. I mean, I see people in these Facebook groups, and they're like, oh, I've been off suboxone, a week, and, this is awesome. But they have no clue what's in their toolbox to help them when they have a bad day, because everybody has a bad day, right? You have to have that. You have to have a fail-safe. You have to have a fallback. So even if you do get off of buprenorphine, you have to feel okay with it if you have to go back on it again. And you have to have medical support for that once you've been off it a while. Okay? Because one relapse could kill you. And that's it. All those people that love you don't have you anymore. Your life is over. So, anyway, I think it's important for everyone to share their stories, because some people are just lost. They're watching their kids kill themselves. They're watching their spouse be secretive and, lose all their money on opiates and lose their jobs and all these horrible things. But it's because they're not ready yet. They haven't gotten to the bottom of why they ended up where they're at. Maybe they're not ready to face it, but at some point you need to be. So that's my story and my ramble. I'll have more stories to come if it matters to anyone. And take care. And if you need any help, you need resources, you need to find a doctor in your area. If you don't have insurance, but you think that methadone or suboxone would help you, I've got some resources and I've got some tools and some skills, and I can help you. So you just reach out to me and I'll do the very best that I can. I can't guarantee anything, but there are some patient assistance programs out there, that you can use once in a lifetime per brand. So there are ways. Let's figure it out together. Somebody needs you, and one day you'll realize that you're worth it. So take care. Bye-bye.